Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Before we begin this important interview with David Morgan, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on a couple of censorship issues from YouTube that I've been experiencing lately. And the first one is that the video I posted titled Vanishing Brass on March 18th has been locked as private by YouTube. I got a notice saying that due to YouTube's policies prohibiting misleading tags, the video has been locked as private. Now, they noted that I wasn't getting a community guidelines strike, but wanted me to be aware that they had done this to the video. Now, y'all know what that video was about, the New Zealand event. I won't say more because they'll probably lock this video. But let's take a look at the tags I used to see what could have been so offensive. News, politics, analysis, SGT report, deep state, CIA, Gladio, Trump, Five Eyes, Snowden, NWO, New World Order, and gun grab. Now, what on earth could be offensive about any of those tags or misleading about any of those tags? Snowden, of course, relates to Five Eyes, the deep state, the CIA, the intelligence agencies working together against nationalism and against sovereignty. Gladio refers to Operation Gladio, the NATO operation in which real people were killed and real stuff was blown up. And of course, it was all blamed on enemies of those who actually did it. Deep state, analysis, SGT report, politics, news. These are all spot-on tags, and in fact, I didn't include a bunch of tags that I should have. For instance, New Zealand or false flag. The list goes on and on. Anyway, I wanted to point that out to you because YouTube has also done this to my interview with Oli Damagard and Cody Snodgrass about the exact same topic. Published on March 21st, that video had some features disabled based on hate speech. You can see the title of the video here, which I will not even mention because, again, they'll just flag this video. But if we click on some features disabled, it takes us to this claim, limited features for certain videos. Hate speech is not allowed on YouTube. We remove content promoting violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on certain attributes. YouTube doesn't allow content intended to praise, promote, or aid violent criminal organizations. This is so off base as to be profoundly idiotic, guys. Of course, that video discussed the possibility that what happened in that country during that day in that event was not exactly as we've been told. The claim from YouTube goes on to say content that doesn't violate our policies but is close to the removal line and could be offensive to some viewers may have some features disabled. This may include the following. This is not a complete list. Inflammatory, religious, or supremacist content without direct calls to violence. Conspiracy theories ascribing evil, corrupt, or malicious intent to individuals or groups based on certain attributes, or videos denying that a well-documented violent event took place. Got it. Okay, it was that one. Because we all know that what happened in that country on that day is exactly as the mainstream media has portrayed. Despite the fact that they don't want anybody in the world to watch the video that's streamed live on Facebook, we must believe the official story, folks. So from now on, that's what we're going to do at SGT Report. We are only going to reparrot and regurgitate the official stories of everything that we see on CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, and the New York Times. I got the message, YouTube. Thanks for setting me straight. And guys, for the record, I think I'm going to change the slogan of SGT Report from the corporate propaganda antidote to the corporate propaganda regurgitator. No, I'm not. All right, guys, a special thanks to my patrons and a shout out to this video's sponsor, the Shepherd's Ancient Diet. It's the only biblically inspired step-by-step weight loss system that works to completely transform your body. What if you simply followed the nutritional recommendations found in the Bible, guys? Eating more foods that contain healthy fats. You could slow down the aging process, rejuvenate every cell in your body, and lose weight, all without stepping foot in the gym. Now, I like to run on the treadmill at the gym on a daily basis, and I may even shoot video of that in the future and kind of share with you guys some of the things I do to remain healthy. But with the Shepherd's Ancient Diet, you can accomplish many things that will lead to a more healthful life without ever feeling hungry. Imagine cranking up your metabolism to where it's burning fat all the time. Imagine burning fat when you sleep and when you're eating fulfilling, nutritious, delicious food. The idea for the Shepherd's Ancient Diet is from Christina Wilds, the creator of the Shepherd's Code. And for over 20 years, she's worked in fitness and nutrition, and she's never seen a single system, program, or diet that comes close to the life-transforming principles laid out in the Ancient Diet. So please watch the free video that I'll link below and find out how to use the Ancient Diet at theancientdiet.com. That's theancientdiet.com, where you can learn the biblical steps to weight loss. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. And without further ado, here's my wide-ranging conversation with David Morgan. Not only is he an expert on silver, gold, precious metals, and the Fed, he likes to keep it topical. We're going to talk about the deep state, Trump, and so much more. David, welcome.
Sean, it's great to be on the SGT Report. Thank you.
Yeah, and a shout out to your website there, themorganreport.com, if you guys want to get some inside skinny on all things precious metals and even mining stocks. You can sign up for the Morgan Report, themorganreport.com. David, I wanted to ask you a little something here about the deep state. Did you ever think that things would be so interesting? I think it's the most interesting time maybe in human history to be alive, to watch this deep state being exposed. The Mueller report is in. The witch hunt has come to an end. And now Trump and Barr can turn around and bring this thing against the real criminals. We'll play some sound bites here from Devin Nunes in a second. But interesting times in which we live, huh?
Absolutely. I think it was on your show. I mentioned this once before. My friend John Leffler, who also runs a radio show, Steel on Steel, said to me years ago, and it stuck with me, that at the end, meaning as this unveiling, you might call it, takes place of what's really going on, that they, meaning the elites, the top, will have to take off their clothes and run for the finish line naked. And I thought that was a great metaphor for basically what we're seeing. I mean, this stuff is being exposed. More and more people are waking up. People that were very asleep or very sleepy a couple years ago have really awakened, and they're aware of, many of the things that you put on the SGT report. So I was just thinking almost verbatim what you asked. I think this is unbelievable, not only how corrupt it is, but how it is being exposed. And it's extremely interesting times to live in.
Yeah, you mentioned running naked for the finish line. Now, the finish line, I think, has been moved. It's a little further away from them now because the witch isn't in the White House. And now the Mueller report is in. It's showing no collusion. We knew this. There's no collusion between the Trump administration or the Trump campaign and Russia. He didn't need the Russians to hack the elections to win. Hillary needed that. And now all of it is spilling out. Let me play some sound bites here between Maria Bartoloma and Devin Nunes about the real collusion, and we'll break this down together.
So do you think that another investigation is going to start looking into Hillary Clinton, given the fact that she did exhibit gross negligence in terms of emails, classified documents, and then, of course, a lot of people say that that's really where the Russia collusion was. After all, the Clinton campaign paid for the dossier. They used Russian sources to find dirt on Donald Trump. She did sell a portion of the U.S. stockpile of uranium, and her foundation got $148 million.
Wait, I'll pause it there. Now, isn't that unbelievable? Imagine if this was being said by Wolf Blitzer and Anderson Cooper on CNN. That's the real collusion. The real collusion and bribery was with Hillary all along. We knew it. Maria knows it. Devin Nunes knows it. But CNN won't tell their viewers the truth. Neither will WAPO.
Exactly. Well, if you and I really do not like politics, but I'll certainly jump in with you on this, Sean. If you look back, you'll see Hillary talking about, this is a country of the rule of law. And what she doesn't tell you, or let me interpret, is the rule of law means the same rules, laws, and accountability for everyone, from the janitor to the president of the United States. The same rules, laws, and accountability apply, which means if that is held and the rule of law prevails, she's got some serious problems.
You know what's funny, though, man? They begin this interview with Devin Nunes talking about the two-tier justice system in this country because the Democrats seem to always skate by, people in power seem to always skate by, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or Jussie Smollett. These people, there's a two-tier justice system in this country, and the people that are connected never do hard time if they do time at all. Let's continue with this, and we'll hear Nunes' response.
I mean, that's real money. She got it from a Russian company, and her husband made a speech in Moscow and got $500,000. All of this was ignored as the mainstream media tripped over themselves to say it was Donald Trump and not her. I mean, it's pretty incredible that during the campaign you had one candidate with real ties to Russia, the other having zero, and yet it's the other that gets in the headlines of collusion.
All right, got to pause it and just say, Maria, hats off to you. This is exactly what Anderson Cooper and Wolf Blitzer and all of the mockingbirds over at CNN need to say, but they don't have the guts to do it. They can't do it because they're bought and paid for, I think, by the CIA, truly deep state puppets. So Nunes' response here.
Yeah, and not only that, but they investigated the Trump campaign for exactly what the Clinton campaign was doing. Supposedly they were looking into the Trump campaign because they were worried that Russians were infiltrating and giving dirt to the Trump campaign on Clinton, when in fact they knew right in front of their very eyes they had Clinton campaign dirt that they were supposedly getting from Russians. And Christopher Steele, who was the hired gun of the Clinton campaign arm, that was running around in London somewhere, supposedly talking to Russians. You know, we don't know. But you know, the FBI was willing to take that information and never go do a counterintelligence investigation on Christopher Steele. Maybe Christopher Steele was a compromised Russian agent. We don't know. But this is criminal what the media didn't do.
Yeah, he's right. It is criminal what the media did not do. The Mockingbird mainstream media, David, is in the pocket of the deep state. You know it. I know it. Everybody in the truth media knows it. But we're the only ones, prior to Maria saying this, you know, prior to Fox News handling some of this stuff, we were the only ones telling the people the truth. So interesting times in which we live.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of further comments, if I might. First of all, I'm pretty well acquainted with the Uranium One situation, and I was in a room with a lot of analysts, and we were kind of the bottom rung, you might say. There was a lot of big money in that room and a lot of political power. And one of the guys that I'm familiar with told me at that meeting that one of these people at the top had given a large contribution to the Clinton Foundation, and that they expected to have something take place in the uranium sector. And so it's going to be interesting if this thing gets let's say the kind of scrutiny that Mr. Trump got on false pretenses, false from the very beginning. And look at how long it took and the amount of wasted money, time, and effort. And if this is the real thing, and we know it, if they put a tenth as much effort into it, they'll uncover the facts pretty rapidly. So it'll be interesting to see how justice is served or justice is not served if the rule of law prevails or the two-tiered justice system prevails.
Yeah, we need to see indictments of these people, and we need to see them this year. It can't just be another, let's push the boulder up the mountain and wait another year and another year. Once Trump is reelected, then the real arrests will begin. We're fed up. It can't go that way, David. If he wants to keep the people on his side, heads need to roll. And I guess that's up to Barr. So what do you think? Are we going to see actual indictments?
Well, I don't know. You know, I mean, my heart says let's get it done, and I like Barr, but you know, it's all perception. I mean, you know, I'm not in D.C. I don't know the real ins and outs of these people, what they're really, you know, and who they're connected to, and who's blackmailing who. But we just have to wait and see. But I agree with what you said. Show me, don't tell me. We've seen enough evidence. We don't need to have a delay or an excuse for a delay. I mean, in the due process, you know, sometimes you can get a stay because there's a real reason to delay the hearing, the trial, the discovery process. But there's also the other side of that, which is like, let's get this thing going right now. We got enough evidence. You're holding up the process. That's part of obfuscating the legal process itself is basically throwing roadblocks that are meaningless. So it goes both directions. I don't know. I'd like to think it's going to prevail, but what my experience tells me is it won't. Not that there won't be some cursory look into it, but whether or not it goes all the way or not, I have my doubts.
Right. We might see some lower level people like McCabe taken in and arrested, and he might do a year or two, but we'll never see people like Clapper and Brennan. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they should be charged with sedition. Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, Barry Soetoro. I mean, look, if we're going to have a country we need to have rule of law, and it cannot be a two-tiered justice system, number one. And number two, we have to have borders. So one of the other things that's got me concerned about this president today is that evidently he's punted on the border closure and giving Mexico a year now to stop the flow of drugs and illegal immigrants into the United States. A year. Now, I was listening to the Alex Jones show when I was working out yesterday, and there was an excellent caller who called in, somebody very knowledgeable, former military, and he said that this president absolutely has the executive authority to shut that border down now, get the military down there, and protect our nation. And the fact that he hasn't done it is a red flag. And so I'll get back to what I just said. We can't have a two-tiered justice system, and we have to have the borders secured. And now the president has just punted on that. You know, he's trying to play hardball with Mexico, say, I'm going to close the border. And now he says, I'll give you a year. I don't know how many more years we can give, David. And that's the problem here. For guys like me, guys like you, and our listeners, the average Joes who want rule of law and equal justice under the law, we're getting very frustrated.
Extremely so. I mean, you know, obviously there's been a lot of good, a lot of arrests. There's been a lot of people that have been weeded out of the FBI and other places in the government. There's been some progress, let's say, in the judicial side. There were heavily biased people in the judicial system that have been weeded out. But, you know, on balance, a lot more could be done. And I agree with you, Sean. I just, you know, what came to mind as you said that was what political favor was given to get this delay, you know, and this is how it works. There's almost always compromise. I'm going to digress just for a moment. I've been with Ron Paul just a couple of times. I've been at events like in Acapulco where he speaks, but I haven't gone up to him. But I actually was at the Austrian club meeting in San Francisco, had dinner with him, me and several others. I don't know, it was probably 20 people in the room or whatever. But I just wanted to say, I just find it unbelievably fantastic that someone could hold to their principles the whole time through and be a member of Congress. Because everything is based on compromise. Give me this, I'll give you that. Give me this, I'll give you that. Give in here, I'll give in there. That kind of thing. And he didn't do it. He was a man of principle, at least as far as I see it. Back to you.
Look, I couldn't agree more. I loved Ron Paul. You know that. Made plenty of videos about Ron Paul when he was running for president. And, of course, revealed the obfuscation and the cover-up by the media that he was really the front runner. He actually had a lot of the same support Trump had, and the media covered it up when they would.
Well, we talk about waking up. I'm sorry I get excited. I don't mean to overtalk, Sean, but 9/11 woke up a lot of people. And Ron Paul woke up a lot of people. I mean, that whole Silver Project, Silver Circle, the movie, I was donated that into that project. It was kind of I don't want to sidetrack too far, but the girl that was pretty much in charge of running that thing, Ron Paul, woke her up. But she's young. She was in her early 20s. So, you know, you never know. Shows like yours wake a lot of people up. But Ron Paul certainly put the, and that's one of the reasons they blackballed him so early and so quickly and so thoroughly. They don't want anybody else waking up. They meaning the controllers, the CNN, the control news networks, those folks.
Right. Well, I mentioned Brennan and Clapper and the CIA. Now, of course, Bush Sr., who then became president, was the former director of the CIA. It's the CIA, man, is at the real crux of our problems. There's a great story here on Zero Hedge. It was posted April 3rd. The CIA takeover of America in the 1960s is the story of our time, the killing of Bobby Kennedy that has remained shrouded in the most ignorance. It is one of the greatest propaganda success stories of American history. They blew off the head of JFK, and then they took out Bobby Kennedy. They took out MLK. That's all they do is they take out the leaders that are a threat, the leaders that have the support of the people and can inform the people. Those are the ones they target. So it really is a miracle that Trump is still in office because they didn't have a backup plan for Hillary. Hillary was their plan. That's why, when you said they're running naked for the finish line has been moved substantially further down the field because the witch isn't in the White House. And I guess that's our remaining glimmer of hope.
Well, I agree. I mean, the power does rest with the people. They just don't understand it or have the backbone anymore to implement it. But it does. I mean, if everyone quit showing up to work or everyone boycotted GMO foods or any one of the topics you can press a button on me about. But But, it's organization. It's very difficult to organize a vast amount of people to do the same thing. But regardless, the power does rest with the people. But it certainly isn't run that way because most people would rather follow than lead. And almost everybody's into this psychology of let the other guy do it, and infotainment. I mean, shows like yours that are so vital, but I don't know what the percentages are, but I would fathom a guess that more than 50% of the people that tune into the SG2 report on a regular basis are there to be entertained. They want to know what's going on, but they really haven't changed anything significantly in their lives to, let's say, better their not only their own state, meaning like having an emergency food supply as an example, but they just want kind of to feed on the what if scenario or what is taking place, but they don't really take any real action about it, which is sad. But this is the kind of society that we live in because most everyone sits in front of the television set and is programmed. In fact, I have to use a quote I wrote down. It's the only one I wrote down, so I won't bore you with all my quotes this time, but I picked this one up recently on an audiobook I was listening to, but it said that doers have large libraries and victims have large television sets.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Turn off your TV programming. We all know that there's a reason it's called that. You know what? I just want to make it real clear that I do believe, and I will continue to talk about the fact that I believe there is a group of white hats that back this president and are working to topple and expose the deep state. Now, I believe that, and I've reported on that for a long time here, and I will continue to report what I view as the truth if and when we see those arrests happen, or if we don't, because we have to hold this president's feet to the fire, because there are things that we're concerned about. And I don't think it's because he's a bad guy in the pocket of the deep state just playing his role that he supports 5G and the 5G rollout. But I'm really concerned about it because he may not be educated about it. You want to hear the punchline, David? Get this. So when we talk about the EU being controlled by the bureaucrats in Brussels, listen to this. Brussels halts 5G pilot over radiation concerns as Verizon clicks heels over U.S. rollout. Here's the quote. The people of Brussels are not guinea pigs. So it begs the question, why are we the people in this country guinea pigs to these evil corporations? And I'll take it a step further. It's not just 5G that so many of us are concerned about. And people like Deborah Tavares have tried to warn us about the very real health dangers of 5G and that it can be used as a weapon. But I'll go further. We've got companies like Monsanto poisoning our food supply, our water supply with glyphosate. We have vaccine companies that are not beholden to any sort of lawsuits when their vaccines, which are loaded with things like formaldehyde and aluminum and mercury, harm you or your children. We are guinea pigs to these corporations, and I, for one, am super, super fed up with it. Oh, and by the way, David, if you want to get educated about vaccines and the dangers of vaccines and the risks of vaccines, guys, you have to subscribe to Del Bigtree's The High Wire with Del Bigtree. It is a phenomenal, maybe my favorite YouTube channel at this point, and he's the producer of Vaxxed. He is a genius. One of the former producers of the show, The Doctors, you may not have known that, but when he woke up to what was going on with vaccines and the pharmaceutical companies, he basically blew up his own career by making Vaxxed, and now he's dedicated to exposing these people. But I'll return to the original question, David. Why are we guinea pigs in this country?
I think it's I don't know, but I'll give you my opinion because I've formed one, and it's due to the program. I mean, we're so inundated with the boob tube, and people put their kids in front of the TV and watch Barney or whatever. And certainly I'm guilty of it somewhat. I'm not much of a TV watcher, but the kids watch it from when they were little. I think they're easily programmed. I think we are really the test case because, one, we're a small population base. 5% of the world's population is in the U.S., so there's 95% that aren't in the U.S. Secondly, I think we're the most easily programmed due to the fact that we were usually the first to get the new technology. So a lot of early adopters had black and white little bitty screen TVs in the 1950s. And then we're the first to get color, and everyone just addicted to the boob tube. So I think
it's the lobbyists too, isn't it? It's the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. that are buying and paying for our politicians and getting them to vote. Right now, they're pushing for mandatory vaccines all across this country. And if they buy and pay for the politicians, they're going to get it. And I don't think there's anything more tyrannical than telling the people that you no longer own your body. The state does, and you have to trust their magic needles, no matter what's in them. You don't know what's in them. They won't even tell you what the ingredients are. The safety and efficacy studies haven't been done, but you have to trust the big pharma needle. and government is going to mandate vaccinations. There's nothing scarier than that to me.
Well, I did see the movie Vaxxed, and I'm human. I have all the range of emotions that any human being does, but I don't get angry very easily. But I was really on fire after watching that movie. It was so well done and so well documented. That's what impressed me the most, was how documented everything in there was. And yet, so few people have really tuned into it. And the propaganda continues, and then you've got these characters out there. I just heard a couple of weekends ago, this doctor that's, I forget his name, but he's a propagandist. Basically.
Is he the one that appeared on Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Yeah, he will not debate anybody who's an anti-vaxxer. Like, for instance, he literally said on the show, he won't debate somebody like Del Bigtree because he knows he'll lose. He basically said he can't because he's a scientist and he doesn't have his talking point. Like, the guy is a total bought and paid for disaster. And that's the punchline. These corporations in the deep state have now been exposed. People are waking up like never before. I always like to go back to that BGH in the milk, the bovine growth hormone. There was a tipping point. By the way, that was also a Monsanto product. It also one of the most evil companies in the history of the world, guys. Look at Agent Orange, Monsanto. These people wanted to own the world's food supply, right? So they genetically modify food so that it can survive being sprayed with Roundup, which is in the cell of the food. You consume it, so the Roundup and the glyphosate is in you. It's in all of us now, guys. And it's one of the most evil corporations in the world. But
well, if I could just steer you to the Monsanto with the aluminum resistant seeds. Why is that? Well, it's geoengineering, another one of those things at the top of my list as far as nothing's being done to 5G, freedom of speech that you mentioned, and geoengineering, something that you've done something about on your show and had Dane Wigington on, and others. But, a lot is going on that is of deep concern to everyone. And yet it continues.
Yeah. It just feels like we're under all out assault. And I think what I was trying to get to is that there's a tipping point that was reached with bovine growth hormone in the milk. And the tipping point was that people didn't want it in their milk anymore. And so eventually there was a move. Farmers were providing the consumers with non-BGH milk, which then quickly won out because nobody would buy the labeled BGH milk. This is exactly why they don't want GMO foods labeled. And the lobbyists in Washington, the Monsanto lobbyists, the GMO big agri lobbyists, lobbied our Congress to not label the food GMO because they don't want people to know. Because informed people generally make good decisions for their own health and for their families. And that's really what we're talking about here, David. We're talking about liberty and freedom. And we can't have liberty and freedom if we're not properly informed. And these companies love to cover up the truth and cover up the science. And they don't want people to know that the vaccines haven't been properly studied. There was a great soundbite from that show, The Doctors, when J.B. Handley was on. This goes back about 7 years. And he was talking to the doctors about the dangers of vaccines.
In my opinion, and this is just me wanting to have an open debate about this, vaccines are really the one thing we have looked at as causing autism.
I agree with you. That is completely bogus. That is such a bogus statement. How many vaccines have they looked at in these studies? How many? What's the answer? It's 2. How many ingredients have they studied of 35? What's the answer? It's 1. You've looked at 2 of 36 shots and 1 of 35 vaccines, and you're going to stand on the stage and say that vaccines and autism are unrelated?
Yeah. So, I mean, they cover up because they want us. They treat us like herd animals, don't they? And
yeah. I mean, the whole political spectrum is pretty interesting to me because I've been looking at this whole big picture for a long time. And, it's the left-right paradigm, Democrat and Republican and all this. And yet, every one of you out there that's listening that's in the United States that's considered a U.S. citizen is a card-carrying socialist. You are a card-carrying socialist. You are a card-carrying socialist. Why is that? Well, you have a Social Security number. And you are chattel for the state, and you do not have any God-given constitutionally secured rights. Once you become a socialist, a 14th Amendment citizen, you've given up those rights for privileges. That's why when you saw the O.J. Simpson trial, I said, I'm asking for my 5th Amendment privilege. You no longer have a privilege. Your rights, have a privilege, not a right. They're almost as good as God-given rights, but they are not, and they're not secured by anything. So when you take on the mandate of being a socialist and getting that card, you get a benefit. You get Social Security benefits. And when you get that benefit, you got to give something up, which is basically your constitutional rights, or your God-given constitutionally protected rights is the most accurate way to say it. So, you know, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or whatever, government is so far down the tree. I mean, if you look at the Thrive movie and you look at the power structure from a pyramidal perspective, government is the bottom of the pyramid. The top, of course, is the top bank, which would be like the BIS. And then you have banks under that. So it's banks, 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 and then government. So anyone that really thinks that they know what's going on, and I think the government really has a solution, you better look above the governmental level and look at what you really are and who controls you. Try doing something without a Social Security number. It's pretty tough. They'll tell you, by the way, you know, if you think taxes are voluntary, well, what do you put on your tax form as an individual? That's a legal word. You have to put down a Social Security number. So if Social Security is voluntary, and it is, they'll tell you Social Security system is a voluntary system. So if you don't volunteer for the Social Security system, you won't have a number to put on a tax form, right? But try to do something without such a number. Sorry for the rant, Sean, but I've gone down that rabbit hole pretty deep, so if I just deep dive there for a moment.
No, I totally agree. And then you can get into that whole area of, you know, are you a citizen or are you a person? And, you know, your name in caps is the fictional version of yourself as the government sees you. And our Social Security number really is not, a birth certificate is really nothing more than the collateral against the debt. Get into really spooky areas here when we start to talk about this stuff, guys, because the rabbit hole does go deep. And by the way, I have to comment, I'm seeing your dog on the floor there. Is that a German Shepherd?
It is. It's Argent. That's my dog. He's my ghost rider. You can tell he's taking a break right now.
Argent. Is that silver?
It's silver in French, yes.
Love it. All right. Well, let's talk about precious metals and let's talk about our sovereignty as human beings as it pertains to our economic freedoms. I hope that President Trump will take on the Fed. I mean, he's called the Fed really an enemy at this point, an enemy of his administration and his goals. But we all know what's happened to so many presidents that have tried to take on the Fed and the Rothschilds, therefore, by extension. Many of them have ended up assassinated or attempts have been made on their lives. This is a stupid question, David, because I sound like a broken record, but as we're watching the cryptos bounce big, which I told everybody just in recent months, I said, guys, this is what they do. They did it with Netflix. They've done it with so many companies, Apple, McDonald's, before the Chipotle split off. They love to run these things back down to unimaginable lows. And then the smart people, the ones that know about the manipulation, get in, and then they run them right back up. We're seeing cryptos bounce. Litecoin, I think, is at 90 right now, 85 bucks. It hit a low of 23 not too long ago when I mentioned might be time to dip a foot in the pool. Why is silver still mired at 15?
Well, it's been tough, obviously, and I've felt it as probably as much as anyone. I think the cryptos have, I would say, replaced silver, but certainly replaced it to some percentage. In other words, people that would normally have taken their, call it risk capital, and put it into the crypto market, be it whatever venue they choose, would be money that if the crypto world did not exist, would probably have gone in the silver market. Having said that, I think there could be a solution that is this marriage between precious metals and cryptocurrencies. I'm involved with one called the Load Project. We could talk about at the end of the show when we wrap up. But I think you're going to see more and more of that. And the one I'm involved with is not the only one. There are several, actually, that are tying to real assets, not necessarily just precious metals, but real estate. There's actually one that's tied to cobalt in the DRC. So the blockchain's here to stay. There's little doubt. Cryptocurrencies are here to stay. As far as silver, I think it's going to take gold to move before you get silver to move this time. Normally, I would have said something different a few years back, but I certainly am strong enough to admit, one, when I'm wrong, and two, change my opinion if the market or something gives me more information. I get new data, something changes. And what's changed now is that gold is really the only perceived money anymore. Silver is to some of us purists such as myself, and we know the history of money. But people that are my daughter's ages, 24, 25, they had no concept whatsoever at all that silver was ever money. that it will, will ever be money again or anything like that. We take someone my age, I was 11 when the coinage changed, as I've said so often in these interviews. So I saw silver in circulation. So it doesn't take much of a generation or two, and all of a sudden that whole memory is basically gone. You can be taught it, but then it's just an academic exercise. So what's it going to take? It's going to take gold above 1350, 1360. Once you see gold into that level on volume, you start seeing gold move over the $1,400 level. Then, and I won't say only then, but probably, that's when you'll start to see silver start to play catch up, and you'll see the ratio start to diminish from the 85, 80, 75. I think if you want a key point, this is subject to change. I'd say once you get the gold silver ratio around the 72 level or lower, at that point, we pretty much will see silver start to accelerate. I do believe silver outperformed gold on a percentage basis. I think everything that I said about the silver market from a fundamental perspective probably still holds, but it's not, in my view, going to be the lead this time. It will have to follow gold. Gold's going to have to blaze the trail this time.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say about precious metals, because it is frustrating, guys, and I'll say this. One of the things that's fun about working for a living and earning some money is that it's fun to go out and shop every now and then, right? Because you got to pay for your house, you got to pay for gas in your car and food and all the staples of life that's not really fun. Sometimes it's fun to just buy something nice for yourself. So instead of, wasting $500 on a leather coat or something, spend $500 on precious metals, and it's a store of value. You put it in your safe. It's fun to get it when it arrives in the mail. So fun. And it's tangible wealth that if and when an inflection point is hit, where, for instance, Deutsche Bank melts down and the derivatives books in the world blow up, that precious metal will be worth a lot more. But even though it's been stuck at 15 for so long, it is tangible wealth. It'll never go to zero. So I just wanted to share that with folks, David, because I think it's so fun to buy this stuff. I get mine from SD Bullion. I love those guys. They treat me well. They're a sponsor over at SGT Report too. Great guys. And it's so fun to buy a tube of 20 Silver Eagles or Canadian Maples, or I like those Cougarans, the silver Cougarans. They're so cool. And when you get them, you get the same pleasure or rush of buying an expensive leather coat or an expensive pair of shoes or a watch or something, but it's tangible wealth you can stick in your safe with the potential of going up much, much further in value when the derivatives melt down.
Exactly. No, it will have its day. I'm convinced. I don't see any way around it. I mean, if you go back in history, silver and gold traded at the natural ratio. I would say, well, the natural ratio is 9-to-1 right now, and it is. Why isn't silver 1/9 or 1/10 the price of gold? It's because they have different functions. Silver is considered to be an industrial metal only for the most part. A few purists like myself say it's money or partly money. I can't say it's not an industrial metal. It certainly is. 60% of it's industrial.
Yeah, it's needed. It's needed. I mean, can you imagine a world without silver? Yeah. And as these mining companies struggle with this artificially manipulated lower price, there could come a point where there isn't enough silver for the solar panels. I mean, look at the Green New Deal, how absurd that is.
Yeah.
They're going to take away all our forms of energy.
Let me take on now.
Panels. What a joke. And they need a lot of silver to do that, but it's a joke anyway.
Well, let me take that on for a moment. If you go back to about 15 years ago, the annual mine supply is about 550 million ounces on an annual basis. Today, it's about 850 million ounces. Today, the offtake from industrial use is about 60% of the market. So what's 60 times 8, 6, 8, 40, about 500 million ounces, round numbers. So let's say for thought experiment that the mine supply never increased beyond the year 2000. It did, but let's for a thought experiment say that it did not. It remained about 500 to 550 million ounces, but technology continued on the pace that it has. So we're in the real world there. We're in a fictional world on mine supply. What you would see, Sean, is you would see 100% of the market will be used by industrial use. Did I make that clear?
Yeah, absolutely clear.
So my point is that the industrial supply, the industrial demand has increased significantly over the last 15, 20 years, even as the supply did rise from 2000 to 2016, where we went from about 550 million ounces to now 850 million ounces. What most people don't understand is that when we got into the deficit of silver from 1990 to 2015, we were offing 100 million ounces on an annual basis. And the above ground stockpile went from 2 billion ounces to 500 million. But from 2006 to present day, that has been the above ground stockpile is the above ground supply, I'll call it. I don't call it stockpile. The above ground supply of silver has reached probably 2.5 billion ounces. So we've gone from 2 billion to 500 million, and from 500 million all the way back up to 2.5 billion. So the above ground supply of silver is larger than it was in 1990.
Yeah, I'm going to just do a thought experiment too here, and I don't think this is too much of a stretch. It'll allow us to come full circle here, and I'll round it out with Monsanto and a soundbite from Del Bigtree's channel, actually, which you guys should all subscribe to, The High Wire with Del Bigtree. All right, so you mentioned that young people have no idea that silver was once money and really don't see any value in it now. Now, that is just simply brainwashing. And it's the same type of brainwashing that Monsanto tried to use as it pertains to glyphosate and GMO foods. But now the truth is coming out. So my point is that even though people are brainwashed into believing that derivatives aren't a problem, most people don't even know about derivatives, and that the dollar has value, the paper money in your wallet has value, that's only for today. Once the tipping point is reached and the dollar starts to plummet and fiat currencies around the globe start to plummet, that day is coming, folks, at some point. It may be 5 years, 10 years, it may be tomorrow. But when that tipping point is reached, the brainwashing will cease and people will understand that silver and gold in physical form are real money and have value, tangible wealth. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And I guess that's a great way to get back to Monsanto, because people are waking up, David. And I want to play this soundbite. This is so fantastic. I tweeted this out on April 3rd when I said, do you have any idea how completely evil Monsanto is? Listen to this from 2420 to 2605, but watch the entire episode I wrote. Hashtag glyphosate, hashtag Roundup, hashtag bear. Only 10% of secret Monsanto documents were used in the trial. All right, here's the soundbite. This is an interview with lead attorney Brent Wisner, who took on Monsanto and got a jury award of over $200 million judgment. So just listen to this, guys. I'll play this just to round it out about Monsanto, the tipping point being reached, and people waking up.
We actually showed this to the jury at trial, that the rate at which it's increased is just so monumental that the volume being sprayed, I think if you were to spray it all across the United States, it's about a gallon per acre on the United States.
Wow.
Every year.
Wow.
It's everywhere.
Wow.
And we don't even know how to study something that's so pervasive, because when you study something, you try to compare people who are exposed to people who are unexposed. But who the heck is unexposed? I mean, everyone's getting in their food. They're getting it it's in mother's breast milk. It's at the beginning of life and at the end of life. And the really creepy thing is there's a lot of studies coming out, cutting edge stuff showing epigenetics, showing that there's damage that occurs to a parent, but you don't see the results of that damage until a generation or two afterwards.
Passing it on.
So who knows what's going to happen to the children?
It's incredible. And just very quickly, I thought it was ironic. And I know vaccines is not really your issue, but because we talk about it a lot.
Sure.
You know, it's fascinating because we are finding it now in vaccines, and specifically MMR vaccine, I think was like 3.8 parts per billion. It's huge numbers.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll pause it there. I mean, the point is, guys, is that glyphosate is everywhere, and they're even finding it in the vaccines now. I mean, you just can't tell me at this point, David. Nobody can convince me, David, as a father of 2 boys who are vaccine damaged, nobody can convince me that this isn't a eugenics program. I tell my wife at this point, many of these vaccines, maybe not all, but many of these vaccines are chemical weapons delivery systems. And the fact that they're now finding some glyphosate in some of the vaccines like the MMR, if that's not a red flag to a parent-to-be or a current parent, I don't know what is. And again, these evil pharmaceutical companies want to make vaccines mandatory. It's unbelievable.
This is where, the rubber meets the road, so to speak. I mean, it's
the line in the sand. It's the line in the sand.
But this is where parents should say, that's it. They're not getting vaccinated. And of course, you're ostracized and there's penalties and all the stuff that the state puts on you. But it shows you, again, going back to this, are you a card-carrying socialist or not, how much power you really have. The answer is very little. But in a way, you also can opt out. In other words, you could just refuse to do it. I know it's extremely difficult, but this is the right answer. I mean, who wants to subjugate anyone or to what's in these vaccines? And This is why they're fighting so hard with the propaganda, because it doesn't take much real research to determine what the truth is. It doesn't take much. So once you know the truth, now what do you do? Because now you're compromising your own core beliefs if you let your kids get vaccinated, if you know what the truth is, that chances are they're going to be harmed. Maybe not in a direct way, but in an indirect way. I'm going to just digress real briefly, but I was listening to somebody I know and trust, and he was talking about, Mark Pazio, who does a great study on natural law, by the way. I digress. He thought that vaccinations caused him to have allergies. And I thought, you know what, that's so interesting, because after I got my last series or set is when I had massive allergies as a teenager, just massive. And up until that point, I had no problem breathing, no problem at all. Anyway, I'm back to you.
No, that's not even speculation. That's something Del Bigtree talks about too. You guys really, honestly, the guy is the lead. He's taking the lead along with Robert Kennedy Jr. in taking on these big pharma companies and getting the truth out. So subscribe to Del Bigtree. You're absolutely right. They cause all sorts of inflammation. They cause brain issues. By the way, the Hep B vaccine, the research coming out of China now shows that the Hep B vaccine, which they give to babies on day 1 or 2, causes brain damage in mice. They won't do those studies in this country, David, but they're doing them overseas, and it's all spilling out.
Is it safe to say, am I going on a limb if I say, based on Yao studies, hepatitis B can destroy or cause neurological disorders in the brains of mammals?
It's been established that it can biologically cause brain damage. And I would argue that that should be enough to pull the vaccine.
So guys, the absolute line in the sand is, of course, our Second Amendment rights, but forced vaccinations has to be a line in the sand for we the people. Because if they can inject you with whatever they want by force, what's to stop them from depopulating in the future if they choose to do it? All right, guys, our guest has been David Morgan. David, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a very a wide-reaching, varied conversation here, but I think that's why I like to have you on, because you like to tackle all sorts of different issues, not just precious metals and mining stocks. But for those who are interested in that topic specifically, how do they get the Morgan Report?
Yeah, well, there's a paid version. I've got a special for you. If you go to themorganreport.com and you go to the subscribe tab, scroll down and say join the Morgan Report. Once you subscribe, there'll be a coupon code. If you type in SGT, that's SGT, all lowercase, I'll give you a 25% discount on your subscription to the Morgan Report. You can buy it either annually or monthly if you choose to. And above and beyond that, Sean, for your audience, what I will do is I will also, after they become a member, I will send them a link to my scheduling software, and they will get a consultation with yours truly, me, so that I could go over with them how to use the Morgan Report properly, and I'll tell them verbally about the best speculation I've seen in the industry in over 40 years of investing in the resource sector, so that they will get kind of a head start. I'm going to offer this from the time we're doing the interview, which is the 4th of April. I don't know when you're going to post it, for 1 month, which is the 4th of May. So all bets are off on Cinco de Mayo, excuse me, I mispronounced that. So you have 1 month, you get 25% discount. And if you type in the SGT code, I will give you a free consultation for at least 15 minutes so that you get started in the Morgan Report. And I want to tell you about this speculative opportunity that I think is one of the best. I am biased. I do own it. It's been on my list. I'm the only analyst that has it and knows about it and has written about it. So this is an opportunity to bet a little, win a lot. I don't want you to overload on it, but it's something that I think another newsletter writer is going to bring to the fore here probably within the next 3, 4, 5 months. Once that happens, he's got a huge list and it will probably explode the price, but I can't guarantee that. I'm giving you some conjecture, forward-looking statement. I don't know the future.
All right. Well, that's an excellent offer. That's an exciting offer. You got to be careful with these things, David, because when I had Wayne Jett on, he sold through his remaining 750 books in 8 hours, and then he was left with quite a problem. So, but God bless you. If you get 750 people that want that one-on-one with you, you're going to have a very busy year. So
I will.
All right. Well, I see that Argent got up. Maybe he has to go outside, so we'll let you go. Our guest has been David Morgan. David, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, my pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You know how much we value you, and a special shout out to my patrons. God bless you. Thank you all so very much for your support. We very much appreciate it. And guys, for real news 24/7, you can visit us at sgtreport.com. Check out thephaser.com, where I hand select very interesting content for you that you may otherwise miss, and thelibertymill.com, which is essentially the Drudge Report for the Liberty Movement, an aggregator of the very best sources 24 hours a day. All right, guys, thanks so much. God bless. Bye-bye.
There's one plan. It is through Christ Jesus. Paul said there is no difference in the Jew or the Gentile. You're in Christ or you're not in Christ. There is no special covenant for the Jewish people. You are either saved by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, Yeshua, or you are not.